All right, guys, welcome back to another Tundra Cast episode. This is episode number 49. Today we got a very special guest. We've got Micheal Russo joining us. He's of course, the athletic writer for the Minnesota Wild. If you guys, we're going to cut right to the interview now. If you guys enjoy the video, please leave a like and comment, and obviously subscribe to continue to support us.
Well, Micheal, it's an honor having you on. You are one of the biggest writers in all of hockey Twitter. So to kind of take it a step back and start off, how did you get started at The Athletic?
At The Athletic, so I was at the Star Tribune for 12 years, and The Athletic started in, 2016, 2015, 2016, and they had reached out to me like a year before I actually went there, and to be blunt, I'd never heard of them. I didn't know what they were. I feel bad saying this, but I actually got a kick out of, one of my colleagues now that's a great hockey writer, Scott Powers, who you probably know well, Jimmy, being in Chicago. He reached out to me. He reached out to me and said, hey, these guys at The Athletic would like to talk to you about a job. And I'm like, well, why would I ever leave the Star Tribune? It's a great newspaper, great job, great team I'm covering. You're a great, you're in a hockey market where obviously fans read you and love the Strib, and it's been around 100 years. So why would I ever go to a startup? And then a year later, I quit my job at the Star Tribune and went to The Athletic. So, these guys, Adam and Alex, that started The Athletic, they brought me out to San Francisco. I met with them, and they absolutely sold me on what they wanted to do. And I think if you're a hockey fan, there's no better place to read about hockey than The Athletic. We cover every team. We are able to, let stories breathe, deadline constraints, and tell awesome stories. And I think after, I worked at the Sun Sentinel forever in South Florida. Then I came up here to the Star Tribune. I just think the newspaper industry was starting to, really, it wasn't that it was starting to weigh on me. I just think I needed something different and a new challenge. And this certainly was that. I still loved the Star Tribune. I loved the newspaper industry. But this was a huge, opportunity for me that I just couldn't pass up.
Yeah, for sure. During the offseason, there were reports about Kirill Kaprizov potentially going back to Russia. Were those any accurate, and how did those talks progress once the rumors came out?
No, I just think it was, something that was, from his side probably floated to put a little pressure on the Wild. I don't think there was any, Kirill Kaprizov wants to be an NHLer, and especially after, last season, seeing how well he could function in the NHL, I think that there was no doubt that he wanted to come back. He wasn't going to go back and play the KHL for a fraction of the money. So I just think a lot of that was to put, pressure point on the Wild to get negotiations going, and whether it worked or not, who knows? But clearly, he got his deal done and has come back this year, and it's just been absolutely awesome. So, especially after a real slow start to the season. He's just been great lately, and hopefully the injury that he just suffered recently, won't be something that keeps him out long term.
Were you a bit surprised he got 5 years and $9 million?
I thought the Wild wanted to give him 8 years at $9 million. So, I think for somebody that had as few games played in the NHL, I was surprised that it got to that point. But the reality is that they had to get him done. It's the first real superstar they've had in franchise history. They have a couple of really good quality young guys on their, coming up in their prospect pool. They've got a couple great talents and guys like Kevin Fiala. But Kirill Kaprizov is the real deal, and they had to get him done. And clearly, it kept both them happy. They got him locked up for longer than the 2 or 3 years that would have made him a free agent right away. And he also gets to keep his opportunities open to see if he wants to, in 5 years, explore somewhere else or re-sign here.
Right. What are some areas you think the Wild could improve on come to trade deadline day?
I think it's been the same answer that I would have given 20 years ago, and same answer I would have given 10 and 5, and that's the reality is that they need a center. I think that this team is a center away from being a true contender when they're healthy. You just know that at the end of the day, if the Wild are going to want to do what they want to do, which is go and win a cup, you're going to have to go through teams like Colorado, teams like Vegas. Colorado is really hitting its stride right now. Kemper's on fire, McKinnon's on fire, Rantanen and Landeskog. I mean, that team's awesome. And then, Vegas is going to get Jack Eichel back. So, to me, the Wild could be right there with these teams. But if you're going to go through them, you're going to probably need to improve up the middle, and we'll see if they're able to get it done.
Speaking of Eichel, we know Minnesota was in on him. Do you know what they were offering?
I don't think that they were ever completely in on him. I think they would have been willing to give up, pieces off their roster, because the reality is that they couldn't afford Eichel long term unless it was significant players off their roster. Probably guys like Kevin Fiala and Matt Dumba, just because the math adds up. And the fact is the Wild don't have a lot of cap space in the upcoming years here. So I think that from Buffalo's perspective, they wanted all futures from the Wild, multiple first-round picks, multiple top prospects, and I just think that was something that, one, Bill Guerin couldn't stomach, but two, Bill Guerin couldn't afford. You just couldn't add Jack Eichel's $10 million salary without giving up pretty much $8 or $9 million in salary back. So It just never worked out.
Last night's game against Washington, Kevin Fiala was bench mid-game. What will happen with him?
He took 3 penalties in a span of 4 minutes and 27 seconds, and Dean Evison and him have an interesting relationship dating back to their days with Milwaukee. I think a lot of times Dean treats Kevin almost like a father would treat his kid that he's coaching in a youth game, right? I think he sees a lot of his faults and very few of other people's faults, and it just feels like sometimes Kevin deals with a different set of rules. But last night he took 3 penalties in a 4 minute and 27 span. He sat him down. What made it a real story yesterday is he sat him down, knowing that he was without 9 other players on the roster, and yet he was still willing to do it. But I think Kevin really showed his maturity last night by rooting the guys on, cheering the guys on, and then having a frank conversation with Dean Evison in the middle of the third period and basically telling him that look, I know that I messed up, but regardless if you play me again, I'm going to support these guys, and I think that meant a lot to Dean. He put him out there, and then Kevin Fiala absolutely, paid his coach back for the trust by playing hard like he always. I mean, Kevin Fiala always plays hard, and he's always skilled. But in the final shift of the third period, he wins. He goes in there, digs a puck out after a face-off, and Zuccarello ties the game up and sends it to overtime. And then obviously in overtime, the Wild weren't able to secure that extra point. But then in the shootout, Kevin scored the game-deciding goal with just a brilliant move. So it was really impressive response from Kevin Fiala last night when all eyes were on him.
What's Cam Talbot's future looking like in Minnesota? Do you think they're willing to keep him, or is he going to maybe end up leaving through free agency?
Well, he still has a year left on his deal after this one, so I think that he'll definitely be back next year. And I think that he's a sort of a bridge. Now, maybe Capo Kakkonen is that guy that winds up supplanting him, or he just buys time for Jesper Wallstedt, one of their 2 first-round picks last year, who's just having a marvelous season in Sweden and looked like he was going to have a great World Junior Championship until it was postponed because of COVID. They're going to try to sign Jesper probably after his season in Lolia and bring him over here at a minimum to play in Iowa next year. And so Cam sort of is that perfect bridge to get them there.
So Judd Brackett was brought in 2020 as director of amateur scouting. How much of an influence has he had in these last 2 drafts?
Right now, Jimmy, it looks like he's hit a lot of home runs. I mean, they've the one thing that Bill Guerin has tried to do is give him a lot of bullets in the chamber and not trade away draft picks and things like that. And then when you have a good talent evaluator like Judd Brackett and a really quality scouting staff that he has either inherited or put together, then you could go and the more picks you have, the more likely that you're going to hit on some of these picks. And so far, it certainly looks like he's done. Looks like the Wild had a really good first 2 drafts under Judd Brackett after a really good first 2 drafts under Paul Fenton before he was let go. And now a team that for many, many years, one hasn't picked at the top of the draft like your Blackhawks have. But the other reason is like they are a team that has traded away a lot of draft picks. And, because of that, they didn't have a lot of prospects. Now, all of a sudden, they've really resisted trading a lot of their picks the last couple of years. So they have a lot of kids in the pipeline. And I think that now gives Bill Guerin the ability to either, this summer feel like he could trade a first round, or not this summer, on this trade deadline, maybe trade one of his first round picks, trade a prospect, and try to go buying that way, where something maybe the last couple of years Bill Guerin and Paul Fenton resisted to do because they wanted to build up the pipeline here in Minnesota.
That actually ties into the next question here. Matthew Boldy, Jesper Wallstedt, Carson Lambos, Jack McBain, Ryan O'Rourke, Kalen Addison, Marek Kuzanitov. There's so many good prospects here. Marco Rossi. So, if the Wild need a center, could they, target a guy like Tomas Hertl and maybe, use one of those guys in the trade along with Kevin Fiala?
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if my gut says that he would want to trade Fiala at the draft, because I think if you go into the playoffs, you're going to, unless you're trading for a guy with term, I don't know if you're going to trade Kevin Fiala right now, because he's somebody that in the playoffs could maybe potentially really get this team going. He's showed it 2 years ago in the bubble that he could be a playoff player. Last year in the playoffs, he had an ample amount of scoring chances. So I think that Bill Guerin would love to keep him on the team if he can. But if you're going to go and get a rental like Hertl or a Giroux, I think you're 100% going to have to trade a first-round pick and one of those prospects. And I think that because you have so many prospects in the pipeline, it gives Bill Guerin a little more freedom to potentially make that hard decision. I think from a Wild fan perspective, it would be really, really tough to lose one of the top prospects in a trade for a rental. But clearly, this is the year to do it, just because of all the tight cap situation that the Wild have coming up here in the next couple of years because of the Parisi and Suter buyout. So, to me, if you're going to go out buying, this is the trade line to go and do that.
So, Michael, you are involved with the Wild as much as anybody in terms of being around the team and watching them, keeping track of them. Ryan Hartman and Marcus Foligno are having incredible seasons, and to the outside eye, it's a bit surprising, but can you say, to someone who's been around all this, is this something that's maybe a little more expected to you and Wild fans than maybe other people?
I expected them to both have really good years because I knew they were going to get an incredible amount of opportunity, but I never thought that Ryan Hartman would have a year like this. I mean, they didn't start him on that line.
I'll second that.
Yeah. They didn't start him on that line with Kaprizov and Zuccarello, but he's got in there and he's fit like a glove. Last night, he played 27 minutes last night. Now, a lot of the reasons why they did that is they don't play again until Friday. So Dean Evison clearly bulked up, overextended a lot of his guys to get those 2 points, and knowing that they would have a week really to refresh for the game against Anaheim. The Wild aren't practicing today or Monday, so that'll give them an opportunity to really prep for the games coming up here, because they have a lot of games against tough opponents like Anaheim, Colorado, and your Blackhawks. But
tough.
Both of them have been really good. I mean, 15 goals for Hartman, ton of assists, looks great next to Kaprizov. I mean, the one thing that Hartman does is that sort of cliched go to the net, bring defenders with him and open up space for guys like Zuccarello and Kaprizov. He knows where he needs to go and he goes there, but he also, he was a first-round pick for a reason, and he's got some skill there. From Foligno's standpoint, this has become in a lot of ways his locker room with Jared Spurgeon and Matt Dumba. Foligno has just such an energy about him. He's such a leader in that locker room, so respected in that locker room. And not only has he found his voice in that locker room, but he's clearly found his game on the ice, where he is just one of the most impactful players that the Wild have in their lineup. And, in a lot of ways, I think it was good that the Wild didn't get Nick Foligno this year. I think if Nick came here and struggled or didn't get a lot of ice time, that would have put a lot of added pressure on Marcus to watch his brother, maybe get some scrutiny in the public and things like that. So I think it probably actually worked out better, as disappointed as the Wild were at the time to lose out on Nick Foligno to the Boston Bruins. I think it probably, helped both of them out. And in a lot of ways is one big reason why probably Marcus is playing well this year, if that makes any sense. I don't think that he has to deal. I remember when Mikko Koivu was here as the captain and Saku Koivu, the Wild pursued as a free agent. Saku chose Anaheim or chose to resign in Anaheim for that very, very reason, because he didn't want to put a lot of stress on Mikko, and one, infiltrate his locker room, but two, put stress on him that if all of a sudden Saku's game fell apart late in his career, that all of a sudden Mikko would have to watch him get scrutiny from the fans, from the media, and things like that. And it probably worked out. As disappointed as Marcus was at the time that Nick chose the Bruins, I think it probably was the smartest decision for Nick and Marcus at the time.
Were the Wild offering the same contract as the Bruins, or were they offering a bit more money? Because
they were offering less money and less term, and so one, it was a business decision from Nick Foligno, and two, I just think that there was some heartstrings there because of Nick's daughter years ago had a heart condition and had an operation at the Children's Hospital there, and I think that it just meant a lot what that hospital did for their family, and I think that was one big reason to be close to that place.
Right.
The Wild recently extended Dean Evanson's contract for 3 years. Whatever you knows from his coaching style that's turned around the ship in Minnesota from the Bruce Boudreau days and the Mike Yeo days.
Yeah, I mean, he's a hard-nosed guy. I mean, he is somebody, I think Bill Guerin said it really well, is that he's got passion, but he's got compassion. And that's kind of Dean. I mean, he is a guy on the bench. I mean, when they win a big game or score a big goal, if you're in the vicinity, he's liable to just punch you right in the face, and in a good way. Like he is somebody that, like, people try to, he'll grab you by the neck, and I mean, he is. I would not want to go toe to toe with that guy, and I'm sure there's been plenty of times that he's wanted to go toe to toe with me. He is one strong cat, and he gets fired up, and he's in a lot of ways the way that he played the game as a player. Is the way that he coaches. And so he's pushed a lot of the right buttons here. I will be the first to admit that when they replaced him with Bruce Boudreau, with him, I just figured he was a placeholder to eventually go out and have a full coaching search. And then going into the bubble in the middle of a pandemic, it made sense when Bill Guerin shed the interim tag off of him, because he really only gave him an extra year in a very odd time. And so this way it would be kind of a tryout for Dean Evason and give Bill Guerin time to maybe really scour the landscape, learn more about his coach, and decide if he wanted to conduct a full coaching search. And what do you know? Dean, up until the time that he was extended, was coaching one of the best teams in the Western Conference and earned that contract. And to show you what type of class act Dean is, he didn't want that contract announced until his assistants were taken care of as well. So the entire coaching staff is back. Coming up here for the foreseeable future, so It's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Who do you think?
One player.
Sorry.
You want, just one thing. One player struggling under Dean Evason is Jordan Greenway, and I mean, he kind of makes a bit too much money for a bottom six forward. So similar to Fiala, do you think he could be a trade target soon?
Yeah, I do think so. I just think that the Wild don't have a lot of cap space, as much as they love. I love Jordan Greenway in a lot of ways. The reality is they have so many similar type of players down in Iowa that also could probably add more offensively than Jordan does. So like Matt Boldy, for instance, is somebody that's come here in the last couple games, played really well. He's somebody that's got a long future here. If you put him on a line next year with Eriksson Ek and Foligno, they probably don't miss a beat and maybe get a little more offensively, where maybe Jordan is a little harder and things like that. So I do think that Jordan's probably, in a lot of ways, to Fiala, probably in sort of the wrapping up stage of his Wild career, and will be used as a trade bait at some point.
Yeah. Who do you think Minnesota's biggest threats are in the Central this year?
Well, I mean, Colorado, clearly.
Yeah.
Colorado is just, they are on fire right now. I watched their highlights of last night's game and the way they came back on Toronto. And you got Cale Makar, who's just out of his mind good. Byron playing great. Kemper winning games every single night. Obviously, McKinnon, and Landeskog, Kadri. I mean, that is a good team. Joe Sakic has done a great job really expanding the depth on that team. And then really, that was the one reason why they really struggled here in the last couple of years is goaltending and defense. And now you look at the blue line that's got Devon Taves and Sam Girard, who's just awesome, and obviously Byram and Cale Makar. I mean, it's just a well-balanced team right now. They're clearly the team to beat.
Do you see this Minnesota team as a Stanley Cup finalist?
I mean, as I said, you're going to have to go through Colorado and Vegas if you're going to get to where you want to go. So to me, they're a center away, as we've talked about. I do think there's something special brewing with this team. They've got a ton of depth. When they were healthy, they were absolutely rolling and steamrolling teams. But again, until you're beating Vegas and Colorado, you're not getting to where you want to go. And Colorado's had their number the last couple of years, especially in Denver. And up until this season, in the regular season, the Wild usually play Vegas unbelievably. This year, Vegas in 2 second of back-to-backs beat the Wild both times, and obviously had the 7-game win last year in the playoffs. So, they are a contender in this conference, no doubt, but you're still going to have to go through those two teams who probably have much more pedigree and more talent than they do. So the Wild would have to win on depth, and maybe they could go out and get that center that we're talking about that could help push them over the top.
All right, so here, with the Wild's cap concerns already only getting worse next season, do you think this is the year to go all in? Yeah,
I do. I think that, as we've talked about, I mean, you've got a ton of prospects, a ton of picks, and, as Scheiden said, I mean, like, this is this is the year to maybe go out and get that rental player. You know, they were interested in JT Miller, who had term upped on his deal. It doesn't look like they're going to trade JT Miller now. So really, there aren't too many centers out there that could come in here and fill a role right now that are in the last year of their deal, other than guys like Giroux and Hurdle. So if you're going to go and pursue them, it's going to cost you a first and probably a prospect at a minimum. And I do think, because of the amount of added pieces that they've added to the pipeline here the last couple of years, that this would be the year to go out and do it. Because in the next 2 or 3 and 4 years, when the real pain of the Parisian Suter buyouts hit their cap situation in a league right now where the cap might not go up because of the damage being done again by COVID and all these postponed games, and not enough revenue up in Canada and things like that. Really, they're going to have to depend on a lot of entry-level guys here in years 2, 3, and 4, the buyout situation. So I do think that this is the year to get it done.
What was the decision to buy out Suter and Parisi, knowing that that years 3 and 4, you basically save no cap space?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think it was a chance to make a clean break from both of them. I mean, look, Parisi, really had a tough time last year, both physically and mentally on this team, just getting fourth line minutes, healthy scratched. This is a proud hockey player that needed a fresh start, and Bill Guerin wanted to give him that fresh start. So he made the decision to buy him out, and we made the decision to buy him out. He just figured it's time to make a clean break from Ryan Suter as well. It worked out for Ryan Suter because he gets now the $6.7 million in buyout money from the Wild, but he also signs an extra $16 million that he would not have gotten. So financially, it definitely helped out Ryan Suter as much as it stung him at the time.
Yeah. And do you think Bill Guerin's a top GM in this league, and what areas in his management skills do you think he can improve on?
I do. I mean, I think that he makes bold moves, and I love it as GM, as a beat writer, because you just never know what you're going to have to write on a daily basis. He's got his own convictions. Sometimes it does frustrate the fans that he maybe doesn't give a little more rope to some of these young prospects and opportunity, but he really believes in sort of the Lou Lamoriello and David Poile way of development, that you be patient with guys, put them in the minors and let them mature down there, and then give them a taste, send them back. I think that we're going to see that today with guys like Marco Rossi, probably sent back to Iowa and things like that. He gets his 2 games. He learns how, what he needs to work on, and I think it'll help him only in the future. So, I think that those are the type of things that that could help him. I think at times, what he could probably improve on is I think he gets a little stubborn at times, all GMs act, emotionally and things like that. But that's what made Bill Guerin a great player and what's going to make him a really good GM.
Yeah. And just on the topic of COVID for a sec, what was it like just when the news broke that day when the NHL was going to be postponed? The NBA was postponing games. Like, what was that like? Was it crazy? Like, were there people texting you about it?
Yeah, I mean, it was absolutely stunning. I remember 2 days before I was doing a podcast in Anaheim that I would like to spike off our site, because I remember saying on that podcast that, like, they're never going to shut down the season. There's no way they'd ever play in front of fans, with no fans in the building. And holy crap, did the world change 3 days later. And It was unbelievable. Like, I recently actually went back and listened to my words on that podcast, and I wish there was a way that I knew how to delete it off the internet, because it just was embarrassing. It was just absolutely stunning. I mean, it really, really was. I think all of us have lived through this really tough world. It seems to be happening again. I think we're learning a little more how to live with this virus in the world, because if we don't learn how to live with it, we're going to be stuck in neutral for the rest of our lives, because I don't see this thing falling off the planet anytime soon. So it's tough. I mean, trust me, I would as a beat writer, I want to write about hockey. I don't want to write about COVID. Yesterday the Wild are without 3 players from their lineups. You, Shaden, as a Oilers fan, know what's going on right now.
Yeah.
The way it's doing to the Oilers lineup. It's done it to your, Jimmy and Jake's Blackhawks and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know who Nick roots for
Pittsburgh.
in London, Ontario. No, there you go.
There you go.
It's definitely it affected. This was all Pittsburgh's fault, right? They had the entire training staff, I think, had COVID, and Pittsburgh's had like 2 outbreaks this year. So I mean, it's. I mean, the whole thing, like, I would give anything, and fans the same way. I mean, we're all in COVID fatigue. I'm sure every fan would love to read an article that doesn't mention the words COVID-19, and I bet you, if I did a search right now, I've probably written the word 1,000 times in the last 2 years. So, I mean, it stinks. It was shocking that you could shut down 2 leagues, and then the bubble was even more shocking, right? I mean, to have hockey played with no fans in Canada, and then you're covering games virtually and all that. COVID's changed the way that we do this job. I could give anything to never be on a Zoom again for the rest of my life. Luckily, the Wild really has done a great job. I mean, their PR staff is just awesome. A lot of teams, half the teams in this league right now are going back to all virtual pressers and things like that. The Wild still allow us one-on-one time with players, as long as we're masked up. And last night was the first time that we were 12 feet from the players in a press conference as opposed to, say, 6 feet, which I appreciated yesterday because we got Alex Goligoski in the morning, and then he tested positive right after. And I was like, oh, boy.
Ooh.
Thank God we were 12 feet away and not right in his face like we usually were.
Right.
So.
And yeah, that's all the questions we have today, Michael. So
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on. And well, thank you guys for watching this interview with Micheal Russo in this edition of the Tundra Cast. We're gonna make a lot more content within the next couple of months, so just keep your eyes peeled for that. And thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.